Another episode of The Pilot's Advisor is here. Walter Storholt alongside financial advisor to the pilot world, that being, of course, Ryan Fleming. Ryan, good to talk to you. How are you?
Amazing to talk to you, Walter. How are you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good. Looking forward to what you've got on the table for us. Sometimes we come in with a plan, folks, and sometimes Ryan surprises me. He just rolls the ball out there and says, I got something for you. And that's today's episode.
Well, I just wanted to talk about something I saw today on TV. And I'm not saying
Okay.
everything on TV is fact checked or what have you, but what it was 50% of Americans haven't saved a dime for retirement at all.
A
Nothing.
dime? Like,
And don't plan to.
so
And
just
then it
no
said,
savings for 50%.
yeah, and then the other statistic was that 48% of Americans have saved $10,000 or less.
Uh,
And I'm always saying that I don't think people have a clue how much they truly have to save to produce that income in retirement. But when you start seeing those figures, and I think the last one that they talked about was that of Americans 55 and over, there's still 40 million Americans still working because they have to.
mm.
And I just see some of these figures and it makes me go, wow. Not only I think are individuals not prepared for retirement, that just goes to show you how big the problem is that we have half of all Americans that aren't saving at all for retirement.
Yeah. Now, in the pilot world, you're not running into those kinds of figures, right? I mean, that's certainly the large population numbers, but I would imagine pilots are in a little bit better shape, or do you still see some of those lack of savings habits creeping into the pilot world?
Well, I think no. We have a little bit different situation because in most of the airlines, their companies are putting so much money into their 401k for them, what we call B fund contributions, where it matches, 15, 19, it just depends on the company. Say 19% of anything you make is automatically going into the 401k. They got a lot of those after the airlines went bankrupt and lost their pensions. So
Mm.
obviously you don't have a pension anymore, but how many companies out there actually automatically save for you for retirement? So pilots are in
Especially
a
at
much
those
better
quantities.
spot because of
Yeah.
that. But even beyond that, depending on how early you started, you still might be behind on saving.
So you still see this problem creep into the pilot space. So I would imagine there's a dangerous game here where you could see that on TV and obviously be motivated if you're in that group that hasn't saved to hopefully start saving. But I could see a negative impact where you might look at that and say, well, I'm way better than that average, so I should be in good shape. And that could be a falsehood.
Well, I mean, pilots in general like to, procrastinate, kick the can down the street. And trust me, I get contacted by many pilots they're in their 50s and they're finally thinking about it, going, whoa, I can't do this forever. I'm way behind. I started late. And of course, that makes the pain that much worse because you have to be that much more aggressive. And,
Mm.
if I could scream from the top of the hills, time is the biggest factor with saving for retirement. So if you can get that, that person that's in their 20s or 30s and get them to start saving at all, it is way better in the long term. And, I think, Walter, you've been fiscally responsible over the years through some of our conversations, and just starting early changes everything.
Yeah. You really start to see the impact as you spend more time in the market. It just really starts working for itself over the years. So it can be painful at first when you're not seeing that kind of initial growth and you go through maybe some downswings in the early on days. But boy, it's really helpful to see that long term impact as those savings increase over and over into the future. And it does take discipline, though, to make sure you're not touching that, robbing those retirement accounts to go out and do fun stuff. So we've got to be aware of kind of a lot of different pitfalls.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, when we have qualified accounts, whether that's a Roth IRA, an IRA, or a 401k, the whole reason why the government allows you to do that is they're trying to help you get to retirement. And that's why there's a 10% penalty for
Mm.
you to rob those funds, because you're basically saying, hey, I agree for these special tax treatments and I won't touch it till I'm 59 and a half. So they're trying to help you out. But, of course, in many cases, we are our worst enemy. And I see people liquidating Roth IRAs, 401ks, taking loans out against 401ks. And I get that life happens. I get that inflation's a big issue, but some of it's just simple budgeting. I mean, I look at what my parents survived off of, and I'm amazed we were able to eat.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is just budgeting, personal finance. And of course, I'm not really sure our children are getting that education in schools.
Yeah. I know that can be a bad word, but it's incredibly valuable if you take the time to, even if you don't go live off the budget, run the budget. Like, see what you're truly spending on items, and it can make a huge difference, at least getting the awareness of what's going out the door. I'd been meaning to do this for a couple of years, Ryan, and I know I'm not a pilot, but I think this is pretty universal. And I knew I was overspending in some categories. And so on January 1st of this year, while watching college football, I brought out the spreadsheets
Uh-oh.
and I busted out different categories. I went through the entire year of spending and put everything into the categories and saw some areas where we could easily start trimming and without even really disrupting the lifestyle much. And so that's our big goal for this year, is to continue to stick to that plan. We're not living off of a strict budget, but we identified 4 or 5 areas where with just a little bit of cleanup, we're going to be able to add a significant amount to our savings on top of what we were already doing. And it was like, boy, that's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you make that trade?
Well, I've been married long enough to know that wives don't like budgets, so I'm sure she was not happy with you that day. Kids don't like budgets. But the power of compounding interest is all about building that snowball. And the bigger the snowball you get, the more savings you get, you start seeing the true power of that. But you got to get there early. And I mean, when you start seeing it, you're like, oh my God, I wish I would have been smarter with my money. I wish I would have started saving earlier. And, we talk about it all the time with Starbucks and the $8 coffee. I
Yeah.
mean, that alone, if you cut
That
Starbucks
that was
out
one
of
of our 5 areas. For me, it was Ziggy's, not Starbucks, but local chain to our area, Ziggy's. But yeah,
yeah,
I had to cut back from the 6 to 7 times a week to the 3 is my goal, and it'll cut that expense in half.
well, absolutely. And I think a big problem we see today too is buying these extravagant cars, trucks that are $80,000, and then you're strapped with this big car payment. Yeah, you look really good in that truck, but guess what? It's not helping you get where you need to get so you can put your feet up and retire at 65 and not worry about anything.
Attention aviators, when you've spent years in the cockpit managing the complexities of flight, isn't it time you navigated your retirement with the same precision? Introducing RetirePilots.com. Right at your touchdown zone on our homepage, there's a beacon flashing, "Get my free toolkit." Click that and you'll be cleared for a direct route to Ryan's Retirement Toolkit, tailor-made for pilots like you. Inside, you'll find 2 of his important works, The Pilot's Advisor and Pilots Retire Early. Between these 2 books, you can decipher the 9 critical decisions when retiring before 65 and discover the 7 lessons to help pilots land safely in retirement. But that's not all. This toolkit is packed with altitude high value, including extras to get your retirement plans off the runway and light the afterburners on your 401k. Vector on over to retirepilots.com to grab your toolkit, and let's embark on this journey together. So I'm hearing that the lessons are start early. If you didn't start early, let's get aggressive and let's really not just the importance of a plan and of a true outline of your goals seems to become more and more important. Maybe when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's all about just put money away best you can, throw as much in there as you can, try to increase it as you go through the years. But if somebody's waited until they're in their 40s or 50s, it sounds to me, Ryan, like that's when it's really important to meet with somebody who can put you maybe on a strict plan to start saving, see what's realistic, and kind of, I don't know, the more we can put that pen to paper in that plan, so to speak, maybe the more serious we can get about execution.
Well, and I always talk about the forced discipline. Force yourself to pay yourself first. It's one of the oldest financial laws from back in the day, is to pay yourself first. Before you pay any other bill, you get a paycheck, pay yourself. And what does that mean? I mean, I think they started with like, hey, save 10% of whatever you make, put it away for retirement. I would argue put 20% away. And the reason why I say that is if you do that and you do it while you're young, it becomes habit. And if you're putting 20% away, at some point in time, you'll see that you're ahead of the game. And if you're way ahead of the game and you've already built that snowball, you're in the driver's seat now. You're not playing catch up. And the worst thing is to see somebody in their 50s that started late and they realize their back is against the wall and the time factor is not there anymore. So, the walls are kind of closing in on you and you're going to have a drastic change in the lifestyle that you wanted to live or the lifestyle you're living now, because the numbers just don't add up. And it's a very sad thing to see. And I don't want anyone to have that stress. And that's why I try to preach starting early and saving and aggressively save.
The sacrifice of saving 15% versus 10% or 20% versus 15%, if you can squeeze out those extra percentage points earlier in life, you're not going to feel that pain a ton and in those early years. And then if you stick with that habit, you're not going to feel that pain even as your income increases when you get older. But yeah, the pain's going to be huge when your advisor says you've got to save 50% of your paycheck or more in your final 10 years of working in order to even have a chance of getting close to your retirement goals. Or even worse, you're not going to be able to achieve those goals that you'd set out.
100%. And just having leverage and being in control changes everything. It's kind of like having a emergency in the air, flying an airplane, and your airplane's not on fire, but you have a ton of fuel. You have all the time in the world. Take a deep breath, talk about it, look at the books, even call maintenance, call the company, and just try to figure out the best way to handle the issue. Having fuel eliminates a lot of stress. Same thing in the financial world. I mean, 98% of all the problems out there can be solved with money. That 2%, that's what you got to really focus on.
Okay, very good. So to kind of wrap this one up, Ryan, if I'm a pilot and my GPS has gone out, my coordinates have gone out, I'm flying blind a little bit. My goal is to get to retirement, but I'm kind of rudderless, so to speak. I'm mixing metaphors all over the place. But
no worries.
If that's my situation, and obviously if I come talk to you, I'm thinking I'm going to get that direction. I'm going to get that roadmap. I'm going to get that ability to get on track.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this. And if you're lost or you're Nordo or if you like, I think about this in the flying world where you've lost SA, you've lost situational awareness, or you have the bends. It's time to fess up. Put your hand up. Say, hey, you take the airplane. I need some help. Best way to do that is go to retirepilots.com. Order our free retirement toolkit. You'll get a couple books I've read. You'll get some other nice treats and golden nuggets in there. And we'll start looking at your situation and come up with a plan going forward. Let's just not kick the can down the street. It's time to come up with a plan and start taking control. Take control of the airplane so we can help you land safely in retirement. Once again, retirepilots.com.
Yep, retirepilots.com. We've got it linked in the description of today's show, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite audio podcasting app. Again, just check the description or the show notes section, and you'll find that link. It's also very easy to remember, retirepilots.com. Ryan, thanks so much for the help on the episode today. We'll catch up again soon.
Always enjoy talking to you, Walter. Hope you're doing well out there in Colorado. We'll talk to you soon.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.